today in the interest of time. Before we do start, you'll notice we've popped a couple of things on the screen there for you already to remind you that, first of all, today you are in listen-only mode. That does not mean you can't participate. You will notice on the column on the right-hand side of your screen is the Go-To Webinar panel, and under that there's a component where you can actually ask questions. So at any time during today, if you have a question for Michaela or myself, please don't hesitate, type it in there, and we'll do our best to address those questions throughout the webinar today. We've actually left a little bit of time at the end of today's webinar to go through some of those questions, and based on that, we are going to try to keep today's webinar to around the 55 minutes maximum, so that everybody's got some time to finish up, ready for the next meeting that they've got set up for today, as we are sure in today's world is happening. Also, just a very quick reminder, we are recording today's webinar for you. So if you would like to share this with any of your peers or anyone in your network post today, you will be able to do that. Within about 2 working days, you'll get an email from us with a link to that recording. Okay, well, you don't want to listen to me all day. Let's get into today's subject. First of all, though, I'd like to welcome Michaela along today. So welcome, Michaela.
Thanks very much, Penny. It's great to be here.
And we're going to, this is going to be a great story today, guys. So I'm really looking forward to getting into it and hearing all about how the programmed group has actually been working through their talent management issues and how we've been able to help them through that. So thanks again, Michaela. So what are we going to actually be talking about? So as per your invitation to today, it's all about creating a HR system of engagement. So how the program business has actually used technology as a change agent. So Michaela's going to take us through a bit around that, and how that's actually been empowering the actual end user and the managers in the process. And a big thing for our program was about how to future-proof HR. So we'll talk a little bit about how this is actually taking them through that part of the journey as well. So to get us started though, who is Programmed? So for some people, Programmed would be a company that they're not 100% familiar with, but when you look at it, it is one of Australia's largest organisations. So Michaela, can you tell us a little bit about them?
No problems at all. So Programmed is a provider of staffing, maintenance and facility management. We directly employ more than 10,000 skilled and semi-skilled staff and tradespeople across a broad range of government, private sector industries, resources, infrastructure, manufacturing and logistics, and the list goes on. So we're in a fair few markets. We provide services to over 7,000 customers, and we've developed some long-term relationships with those customers. Our network is spread both in Australia and New Zealand, and we operate in over 100 branches. The majority of our employees are field-based and not actually based in an office, so that's been one of, I guess, the challenges for us as a business throughout this process. And our HR model is actually a shared service model. So we run very, very lean and put more of the onus back onto our managers to basically guide them through the HR processes that they need to do on a day-to-day basis.
So that, in working with Michaela to work through to today, everybody, it's been very clear about how having that shared services model really is where a lot of organisations want to get in HR, to be strategic in their HR initiatives and enabling the HR managers to really take on board their role as an employer of choice.
Definitely.
Okay, so fantastic. And having an organisation this diverse, your employee base, extremely diverse, some of them on your own sites, on client sites, can actually set some real challenges. And what I loved is when I have a look on your website and how you measure, or one of your measures of success as an organisation, is the fact that your business model is built around your ability to recruit, maintain and deploy a skilled workforce. And that must bring some real challenges to the HR team front and centre.
Look, it definitely does, and look, it's a foundation for everything we do at Programmed. It makes it very clear about what our priorities are, and I guess it keeps us all focused at the end of the day that our people are our priority.
Okay, so let's get into then and have a look at how you and the rest of your team are actually ensuring that business model is actually delivered, and how you're creating that system of engagement. So let's first of all talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you had, and we've got a couple of them here, but this I think was quite a huge one.
Yeah, Penny, look, we operate from a HR point of view. We had 6 silos, and these were all different systems which we were using which didn't talk to each other. So we had one for performance and succession, one for remuneration, learning, and one for recruitment. We had online forms that we were using. Then we've got our payroll system, and on top of that we then had some other areas which were manual. So in this case we're talking about onboarding. So when you look at all that and the fact that our systems didn't talk to one another, you've got a situation where people are having to data enter information into all of those systems. It's duplication of effort, and also because of that you run the risk of more errors occurring. So it just wasn't an efficient way for us to run our HR practice. It also meant that our managers had to learn how to navigate and use all the different HR systems, which all had a very different look and feel. And of course they would have different logins that you need and different details, which on the surface doesn't seem much, but is frustration to the managers out there. So we also have the situation that some of our managers are based on client sites and not directly involved with our intranet, which is where we house some of these systems. So to have a system which people can gain access to via the web was key as well. And the other factor is that our employees, majority of them are based out in the field, so they don't necessarily sit in front of a computer, and our systems that we were using weren't optimised for that purpose. So we're introducing things like tablets and that style of technology, but if we can't use our systems on it, it becomes very, very useless from that point of view. So we needed to look at a solution which would enable our managers to be able to deal with HR issues out in the field.
So that really is that systems of engagement, isn't it then? Because what you were describing is you had all this great stuff to actually help your people through their people management and talent management challenges, but access to it and usability of that was a real issue for you.
Definitely, and for us to try and get 6 silo systems up to a point where we could get that mobility, it was going to cost the business a fair amount of money. So that became another driver for us to look at what else was out there.
Yeah. And it's when we first started talking, Gerson came to mind, who talks very much about the fact that HR has traditionally had this issue. It is about silos, and their example here, shows probably even more than the 6 that you guys were struggling with. But very much what you were just describing there, wasn't responsive to your business needs. So you've got people out in the field. How do you actually engage with them when they can't even connect with you as a HR function? And you weren't administratively having to repeat things into different systems would be an absolute nightmare.
100% right. We just had to get smarter at what we were doing. And as you say, the research out there is suggestive of that as well. It's not a smart way to run your business.
And other parts of the business was quickly connecting with that. Sometimes it takes HR, we come along a little bit behind, don't we, because we're reliant on our people to actually be flexible and such, but when we can take them on the journey, it's a great thing to be able to achieve. So let's have a look at what the drivers were for you to actually change from 6 silos, manual stuff, and not being able to engage so that you could move to the engagement space.
So I guess the first point there is cost to upgrade technology. So some of our systems we built in-house from the ground up. Yeah, wow.
It's a significant investment for an organisation to do something like that.
It is, and look, when you initially create them, it's fantastic, but when the company progresses through its journey and you want to go and change things, it then becomes a very costly exercise. So we were looking at that for a number of our systems, and we're not, an IT company, we're not technical from that point of view, so it was silly for us to continue down that path when there are other options out there which would meet our purpose. The other thing is that the systems weren't dynamic enough. So as our business changed, they were still stagnant as to where they were. And some of the software was becoming outdated, which was another driver that we needed to look at something sooner rather than later. From an employee engagement point of view, a lot of the feedback we were receiving through our engagement survey and talking to our business is the fact that people want career development. And it's great that we had a system there, but it wasn't providing enough visibility for people within our business that there was actually an opportunity for career development. The next point there is around mobility, and I've somewhat touched on this already, but we needed to introduce new technology, and any technology that we were to introduce had to be compatible with mobile devices so that we could get it further out and a greater reach. And as I say, a lot of our systems that we were using, that just wasn't an option at the moment. And the second last one there is the need for a new onboarding program. So in the previous slide, we spoke about the fact that we had a manual system. Well, each part of the business had their own version of what onboarding was.
Right.
And how that would have potentially played out, at the coalface may have been actually totally different as well. So we needed to go in and assist the business to create something which met their needs, but was also, I guess, not as manual and onerous as it was. And the last one there is one source of truth. So from our point of view, we had the multiple systems. We were entering information into those various systems. As that occurs, there's more chance of data entry errors. And once you find an error, you've then got the problem that you need to actually go through all the different systems to work out where does the error actually lie and where's the piece of truth. So you end up, I guess you waste your time on things like that. And the fact that the systems didn't talk to one another was just not an effective or efficient use of our time or resources.
So there's some really key points there that I'm sure a lot of people that are listening to today is resonating with them, and they're going, oh, we're feeling the same thing and we're going through that. And I suppose the big one for me is the mobility of your workforce there. So I'll look at that from two angles with you, if that's okay. The first one is, these are guys out on the field, or ladies out on the field. I do use guys as generic. And so a lot of people make the assumption that they're actually not technically savvy people. So giving them tablets to do components of their work, how are you finding that working?
Well, you see, it's interesting because one of the big changes that we made by introducing the onboarding module is that it meant that anybody who applied for a job at Programmed would need to have gone through the page-up system. So in the past, when we recruited people, if we had somebody who walked into a branch location with their resume, for argument's sake, as a painter, and we needed a painter, then we would happily engage that person. They didn't have to apply online. We hadn't collected any of their information. HR would then go and create a contract and away we go. Whereas one of the big changes was to actually turn around to the business and say, do you know what? The majority of people do have an email address. If they don't, we'll provide them with details and guidance on how to create a Gmail account or whatever else. And it wasn't as big and scary as they first thought. Sure, there were some teething issues, but that's what change always is. But I don't think it's a stumbling block as what people may have thought initially it could have been. Yeah. So, yeah.
And it's amazing. People are more technically savvy these days than I think we do give them credit for.
100% agree.
Yeah, so, handing over a tablet to a painter, he's probably got a 3-year-old kid at home who's taught him how to get the most out of that piece of technology. So
definitely. And look, some of it's the fact that we've needed to guide our managers, hold their hands for some of it, and others, do you know what? It's a piece of cake. It's a lot easier than what they were doing before. So it's, I guess, just making sure you change your approach depending upon who you're dealing with.
And one of the things that I'm aware of is that your managers actually manage the end-to-end, really, of the recruitment process, don't they, themselves?
Yeah, so we operate quite differently than probably a lot of the other page-up users in the sense that we get our managers to write the ad text. We have people in HR who will assist to make sure that the ad, is meeting the right audience, and that we don't have things in there that we shouldn't be saying from, discrimination point of view and all those sorts of things. So we do guide them through it, but they're writing the ad text, they're getting the approval for it, somebody in HR will place it out there on Seek, etc. But then it comes back to the managers that they need to go into PageUp and screen their applicants, organise the interviews, all those sorts of things, and then once they've found the successful applicant, they will then use the onboarding side of the PageUp module and request for a contract of employment to be generated. So 100% correct. We put the onus back on a manager. We're there to assist them through the process if they need the assistance, but yeah, definitely they're the drivers. We use the manager's bubble view, for those of you who have seen it in PageUp, and that's the way we get them to interact with the system.
And so I suppose that would then be an easy transition when you start to introduce other components of, getting your silos down to the one system. When it came to do performance management and such, they're already familiar with using the system.
Correct. It's a slightly different view that they see for other parts of the system, but the way we've set it up, it's single sign-on. So for those people who are connected to our network, they just click a button on the intranet and they're straight into the system. So it's a slightly it's a button that sits next to it if they're going in to do things with regards to performance, etc. But it's, for them, it's one system, and that's a big difference. Yep.
Fantastic. Beautiful. So as you said, a lot of drivers there, and again, Burson have got some what they're calling the Talon Imperative for 2015. And again, while you and I were talking and preparing for today, all of these started to sort of resonate with me. I'm going, these are real problems that you and your organisation are addressing, and taking your employees and your managers on this journey so that you've got a system that can engage them and address these problems is a credit to you, because it's a big job.
It was a massive job. And look, we're still in the process of doing it at the moment, but yeah, you're right, it's a big job but worthwhile.
So this is probably a good spot for us to actually take a break and actually see what challenges people on the line are actually going through at the moment. Let's see if what Michaela's starting to talk about today is resonating with you. So we're going to kick off a poll, and that poll should be up any second now. And the question is quite simple, is what challenges are your organisation currently experiencing? And you've got a number of responses that you can choose from there. It is multiple choice, so you can select more than one. So is it about the fact that, like Michaela in programs, you had multiple systems and some of them were online and some were manual? The same with program, you have a mobile workforce, people out in the field, and you need to be able to connect with them. Are you having some difficulties with retention of your top performers? That you don't have a source of truth. So those difficulties that Michaela was talking about before about, how do you actually find where the error is, and how do you find where the source of truth is when you've got a number of systems in place, and some of those being manual? Or is it all of the above? So it looks like everybody's having a good old time there actually answering the question. So while we do that, we've had a couple of questions come through, and I might just pose one to you quickly, Michaela, if you're okay with that. And so the question is, what does onboarding actually mean to your organisation? A good question.
It is a good question. Look, onboarding has probably meant different things to different people depending upon who you ask, but what we found is that people would enter into our business and people have the perception that onboarding would start from the day they walked in the door.
Yeah.
Whereas onboarding actually starts prior to that. And that was one of the things that we found by using the PageUp system, is that we could start engaging with our applicants and then soon to be employees before they actually start. So it means that you can start onboarding them rather than on day one when they first walk through the door and you say, could you please sit down and in front of a computer for half a day and do some online induction modules. You can actually get people to start doing that sort of stuff before they walk through the door on day one, when they're all enthusiastic about the fact that they're going to a new job and they want to find out as much information as they can about your organisation. we can start getting them doing that before they start. They get a greater insight as to what our organisation does, and that means on day one when they start, they're ready to hit the ground running a lot earlier than they would have been. And look, on top of that, for us onboarding, it's about actually extending it. So you've got them on day one, but making sure they're engaged and you're tracking with them for the first 3-6 months. It's not the fact of you get them in the door, they're all the focus in week one, and then you go, off you go, you'll be right. And we'll have a chat closer to 6 months when qualifying period's up. So for us, it was about changing that onboarding mentality and say, you know what, it starts pretty much as soon as you've said congratulations to that person, engage with them, get things ready for when they start on day one, and then do you know what, your onboarding journey continues with that person for potentially up to 6 months.
Fantastic, and that's great. I love when clients tell us that they're taking that onboarding experience to pre and post that day of acceptance of offer.
And it's a big change to think of it that way.
Yeah, people. I think so too, and it's very much that on day one when they arrive, for them to have had a great experience. You know, I've heard horror stories in the past where, you know, somebody accepts their offer and for 4 weeks they hear nothing because, you know, that's the time frame they had to give to their previous employer to leave, and then they turn up on day one and they go, oh, that's right, you start today. And you think, oh my goodness. So glad to hear that, you know, you've actually taken that big leap to actually go, no, we want to take the great experience that they've been through from the recruiting process and continue and enhance that.
Yeah, definitely. And look, some of our managers would have been doing this prior to the introduction of us using PageUp, but we've also got to understand that some of our managers operate in, you know, branches by themselves with a handful of people and don't really have a lot of touch from head office. So it's helping to, I guess, educate those managers and equip them with the tools that they need.
And everyone loves a helping hand. So it looks like everyone's had a chance to do their voting, so we're going to close that poll off now and let's share those results with everybody so you can actually see. Wow. Okay, so we've actually got that 60% of you have got this multiple HR systems issue. Some online and some manual. So second in line there being they've got a mobile workforce, and that doesn't surprise me. I think that's becoming more and more common where people aren't, even if you are a office-bound organisation, you know, some of your people actually might be working from home and such, so that's considered mobile in some aspects as well. Some have got the issue of how do they retain those top performers, so about 90% there. And we'll, knew this was going to come up, that source of truth, 32%. Yeah, can see it looks like people have got a lot of connecting here with you, Michaela, because we've also got 32% who've said all of the above.
Look, it's nice to know that we're not alone and you're not alone.
Exactly. Okay, so let's get into what you actually started to do then. So you did this in a phased approach, which I can understand. You don't want to go, okay, we've got 6 systems and bang everybody, let's go through a massive change process and pull them all out and put new stuff in from day one. So can you take us a little bit through what phase 1 was about and what you've been able to achieve from that?
No problems at all. So two-phased approach. What we decided to do is that we started by implementing offer and onboarding with a full system integration with our payroll system. So this was actually a two-way integration. So it means that PageUp pushes information into our payroll system and payroll pushes information into PageUp.
Wow.
Massive task at the time, but now it's so much more efficient. So definitely worthwhile going through. The other thing we did is we worked with a pilot group. So despite the fact that working with PageUp, we were building the whole system for offer and onboarding, and technically on day one everything went live. We actually only rolled it out to one part of our business. So they, I guess, were our guinea pig. We were able to work with that business for a short period of time to get their feedback on how it was working. We could obviously iron out any issues from our end, and it meant that ultimately the world didn't fall over if something happened, which it didn't, but it provided, I guess, for that contingency. The other thing it allowed us is that we produced training materials for offer and onboarding, and if there were questions or feedback we were getting from the business, we were able to tweak that information so that once we did actually roll it out to the rest of the business, they then, I guess, got the benefits of it. So we started with one part of our business being our facility management, and then we progressively, a couple of weeks later, we then went to our workforce business, then to our property business and our marine business, etc. So we did it in a phased approach from that point of view as a rollout as well. And the second part of our implementation, where we rolled out performance, succession, talent, remuneration.
Wow.
And we're still rolling out analytics and career paths. So you can sort of see why we needed to break it somewhere. And the logical point was to do offer and onboarding because there was a big driver that we needed to do something in that space.
Right.
And that was one of the things that I was initially working on, was a solution around onboarding, and it was through that process that we then saw all the other modules and, I guess, expanded our journey as to where we are now. So to begin the first phase, the parties we needed to involve was Pay Global, our payroll system that we were using, our payroll team, IT and HR.
Huge project.
So to get them all on board at the start, and then we also had subject matter experts within the various parts of the business, so we could actually tap into those and say, what do you need from an onboarding point of view for people in your business? And through the PageUp system, we had the flexibility to actually tailor that depending upon which business they were in. So it wasn't as though we had to go, sorry, everyone, you all need to have this conversation with this person, order this piece of equipment, etc., and make it, I guess, tailored for each area. The other part that we worked on early on was with our web developer to create our onboarding portal. From the point of view of how our business actually accesses the offer and onboarding sections that we rolled out at the start is through an icon on an intranet. So all they have to do is click on there, single sign-on. They don't need to worry about a password or a username or anything like that. If they're off-site, which we have a fair portion of our business who are located in client offices and using their intranets and websites, they can still log into the system, but they obviously use a password for that. So we provided a solution which was flexible to meet our different employees and the environments with which they work in. And on our intranet, we have another icon, which is, I guess, part of phase 2, which was around our performance, succession and remuneration. So it ultimately means people in our business go to one or two places to get into PageUp, depending upon what they need to do. And look, as I mentioned before, one of the things that we need to do with our business was educate them about all new hires had to come through the PageUp system. So that was probably the big ticket items that we needed to do through phase 1.
Okay, so that's huge. Even though, you know, when you first look at it and you go, oh, so you just did offer and onboarding and yeah, the two-way integration. Why didn't you know, chew up a little bit more? When you start to describe what you actually went through in the change process that you need to go through as an organisation, it makes sense. And what I love there is how you've actually gone to the business and actually said, especially for onboarding, guys, yes, we need some consistency because we're programmed, so we can bring that in. But you can actually have what you need as well, so you can personalise it for your business unit or even for role and such. So did that actually make them going through that process a lot easier for you because of their involvement?
Look, there were definitely parts of the business where they took with that and ran with it.
Yep.
There are other parts where they had sort of been doing a manual version of what we're doing in PageUp anyway, so for them it was just taking what they'd already done, and now they had a system which was sending them reminders. All those sorts of things which in the past they might have, you know, if they were savvy enough, they might have set themselves email reminders, whereas now all those sorts of things are set and forget for them. So, yeah, as I say, a different way of doing things, but a journey worth going through.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's have a look then at what have been some of the achievements from phase 1. So from the end user's perspective, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so look, feedback that we got from our initial pilot group, and it's funny, in preparation for today, I went through some of my old emails to see what was some of the feedback we actually got. And we had one manager who'd been with the business for over 10 years who actually said this was the best system that they'd ever seen it programmed.
Wow.
So I kind of went, yeah, we've obviously hit the mark that people saw that there was a need, and hence we've responded to it. Other feedback was the fact that the system was great. They loved that they were getting reminders because they didn't have a clue what they were doing.
Right.
And you've got to think about it, that people who are potentially managers don't necessarily have all the tools in their kit bag. So if we can help provide them with reminders and those sorts of things, that you know, it was worth doing. The other thing that we found is that the system hasn't been daunting for the end user. So with the managers using the manager bubble view, it provides them with a clean platform. So they're not overwhelmed with so much information and too much choice. They can go in there, there's a handful of things for them to do, and they can easily navigate themselves through that. And look, we're able to create one source of truth. So we found that if a manager had to change a cost centre, or a cost centre was missing from the system, ultimately that meant for us that it wasn't in the payroll system. You can easily direct the manager back and say, you just need to go to payroll, you get it fixed in the overnight feed, it'll appear in PageUp the next day. So from that point of view, our process was starting to become a lot more slick. Yep. Further to that, we've been able to provide a more consistent onboarding approach and engage with our new employees from the moment that they accept their offer of employment, and also keep tracking with them through that first 6 months, which, as I say, were key to what onboarding ultimately has been for our organisation. On top of that, our managers have been able to access the system without being connected to the network, and that has been a frustration for especially those who are remote, that to try and get through firewalls at client sites and all those sorts of things were just a hassle. So to have provided that ability for them to access it in 2 different manners from an end user point of view, it has been a big change. And look, looking at it from a different end user point of view, rather than our managers out there, from those of us in HR who are having to do the back end side of PageUp, yes. From our point of view, we've been able to tweak the system as we've needed. So PageUp guides you through the process when you build it. It's not as though the integration team pretty much went, here you go, here's the system, now you go and use it. We were there to build it with them. So any changes we've needed to make based upon feedback from the business, we've been able to do pretty easily. So it's nice to be self-sufficient from that point of view, rather than having to call up our account manager all the time saying, can you please help? Can you please help? How do you? So yeah, as I say, different end user point of view, but I think it's worthwhile mentioning as well.
Yeah. Well, it comes to the point around, you said that this is about enabling all of the business. So all of the business includes that very lean HR team that you actually have. So it's really important for them to be able to get through what they need to be able to get through without having to be reliant on, you know, a phone call or a chat or whatever every 5 minutes because they're not sure how to adjust.
Look, the other thing, and it's digressing a little, Penny, but given the fact that we've pushed all of our systems into the PageUp modules, it means from a HR point of view that our users, it's easier for them to navigate because you're more familiar. It's one back end that you're dealing with. You're not having to deal with multiple back ends and trying to work out, oh, this sits over here in this system, but I can't find it in this one. It is one system from a HR point of view, Sue.
Fantastic. So it sounds like there's been a lot of learnings from this first phase, which I know you've already started phase 2 of your project. So can you take us through what you've taken from phase 1 to help you go through, you know, probably a little bit more smoothly phase 2?
Communication. It is imperative. Can't stress it enough. And this is communication both in-house, so within the teams that you're working with to deliver the project, but it's also with the various stakeholders. So whether that be us dealing with PageUp, and the integration team that we were dealing with, whether it be the payroll third party that we needed to deal with to get our payroll system up to date, all those sorts of things. It's about making sure the communication between all those parties is where it needs to be, but also being aware that you may actually need to change your communication strategy during the implementation.
Okay.
So as we found going closer to our go live date, we were having daily stand-up meetings. So we would have HR, we had IT, we had people from PageUp and people from Pay Global, all at those meetings in the morning. That way, if there were any issues, we could discuss them in the morning, what we wanted to try and achieve for the day, and then work through that for the day, and then hence the next morning you were still touching base. And that wasn't a reflection that throughout the day you wouldn't be talking to each other, but it was just to make sure we were hitting that critical point, and we just needed to make sure everybody was doing what they needed to do to get us there. So, as I say, can't stress communication enough.
I can see that being extremely critical when you're talking about your payroll system. So, you know, that is, for all intents and purposes, probably your most important HR system. You know, people, even though a lot of people say today, you know, it's all about learning and development and all of those sorts of things that actually engage people, yeah, getting a paycheck every day really helps as well.
Yep.
So making sure that you're taking both the PageUp system and then your payroll system on the same journey sounds like it was a great journey to have.
Yeah, look, it's one of those things that you need to make sure that your payroll system is where it needs to be and all the data is where you need to be before you start down the integration journey, because otherwise you're chasing your tail, right? And it can cause more issues than you need. But I guess the other learnings that we've had is around change management. So it's about making the business aware of the pending changes before you actually go and implement them. So if you can create a bit of hype around it, people then go, oh, I wonder what this is, rather than just simply going in there, switching one system off, introducing another system and say, here you go, you'll love it. Yep. It just unfortunately doesn't work that way. But it's also involving key people within the business to drive a system. So HR's got a voice, but it's not the only voice. So it's working out in the different areas of the business who are the key people who can also drive the new system for you. So that's being reinforced. Another learning we had was around stakeholder management, making sure that all the appropriate resources are available for the project, for the entirety of the project, right. And even having a little bit at the end just in case as a buffer, in case you need to push out your timelines or anything, is definitely key. And resolving issues promptly. You've got a short window with which you're trying to deliver this project, and it's not worth sitting on issues. You don't have time for it. If there's an issue, you need to resolve it whether it needs to be resolved and move forward. And look, the last one is training. Making sure that users are trained, employees are trained, our managers were trained, but also tailoring the training methods that we did to cater for the different audiences that we had. So we've got things from online, face-to-face, we've got paper-based things. So you're catering for everybody's learning style, but also you need to have a plan in place for those people who start after the system went live. So what does a new person to the business, how do they know how to use the PageUp system? So about having those sorts of resources available to cater for those people.
And I suppose, you know, we go back to the very beginning, what we were saying, this is about creating a system of engagement. Everything you've just described there is right in alignment with that, because, you know, it's about helping the end user, the everyday employee, feel comfortable and confident in what you're actually releasing out to them, and that it's actually going to add value to their day. You know, you talked before about the HR team, and, you know, making sure that they as an end user can actually articulate well with the system, and then your hiring managers as well, because sometimes with the hiring managers they go, well, this is actually the hiring manager part of my day, not my manager part of the day.
Yep.
And I have a job that I need to do. So making that be able to link together a lot more efficiently must have a great impact for you.
Look, it was about trying to make their lives easier. So hence the payroll integration meant a lot of the information that a manager now needs to include on a form to get approved for a new job can now actually be fed straight from the payroll system, rather than them having to sit there and go, oh, I'm not sure of the name of the award that role needs to be employed under, or I'm not sure how much money that role we should be recruiting for, all those sorts of things. The more information that we could have pre-fed to them, it then meant less time they needed to spend in the system, and that was key.
Fantastic. Okay, so look, we're going to kick off another poll and just see, Michaela shared a lot of information with you today. So let's see where everybody is in their own journey. So we're kicking off another poll for you. Just asking you, so when is your organisation reviewing your HR technology strategy to empower your people? So this is a one selection only, not a multi-choice. So whether you've already commenced your journey, if you're doing that in the next 6 to 12 months, more than 12 months, it's okay if you don't know. You know, this might be brand new to you, so you're just doing some research around what you might be looking at and whether your organisation wants to go on this journey. Or it may be something that you're planning for the future, so it's not on your current agenda, so you're aware of that, but you're just doing some pre-planning and research into that. So while we let everybody answer that, which everyone looks like they're quickly pushing the buttons there for us, one of the things you talked earlier about was around retention of your top people and people understanding their careers and such. So can you tell us a little bit about what were the major challenges for you in career?
I guess, look, it's about the visibility of a career. A lot of people, when they think of where the next job's going to be, they look at the people who are around them and they look at their manager and go, well, I guess that's my next role, rather than having visibility and go, we have all these different divisions and there might actually be another opportunity which exists for me in one of the other divisions. Or alternatively, it's the fact that my career path, it may not actually be a step upwards, it could actually be a step sideways. Yep. And that is still career progression, because you're still going to be learning new skills and all those sorts of things. So that, I guess, has been one of the challenges, is how can we make our workforce more aware that there are actually opportunities for them, and that we're willing to engage with them through that process.
And you would have a number of opportunities across your organisation. So you might have somebody that would go, actually, I live in this part of Australia at the moment, but I really would love to live in New Zealand. Can I actually go with Programmed on that journey?
Yeah, 100%. Look, it's one of those things that people don't necessarily voice well enough. So they may have said to their manager they'd be happy to move, but we, once again, wouldn't have had the full visibility to be aware of that. So the system has, once again, allowed us to get that visibility, I guess.
Fantastic, and I'm sure you'll get more and more of that as you move into phase 2.
Definitely.
It looks like everyone's answered that poll for us, so let's close that off and share the results with you. So look, this is pretty normal for us. A lot of people are already on the journey, about 45%. The next one there is people that are going to be tackling this in the next 6 to 12 months. And then we've got about 8% saying that it's more than the 12 months. There's some that are unknown, quite a few actually, around 16%, and 8% there that it's not on their current agenda. So a good spread there, but hopefully for those of you that are already on the journey, you've been able to connect with some of the things that Michaela and her team have been going through, and those of you that are going on the journey shortly, or maybe don't know whether you're going on the journey or it's not on your current agenda, and it might now come up that actually this is a worthwhile experience to actually go through. So thank you very much everybody for participating in the polls there for us. So let's have a look at what would be some tips that you'd give everybody before we get into the last lot of questions that have been coming through. What are the tips?
Look, the tips, I guess, come from our learnings. Communication, to have open communication with all parties throughout the process, knowing when to escalate things and who to. So there are times when it is a priority to escalate, and there are other times when it's not worth it. So it's about working out that situation. and making sure that all parties are aware of dates and what's required of them. So if people don't know, then they don't know what they're working towards. And, you know, one little stuff up in the process can have rolling effects. So if we're all talking, then things progress more quickly and more easily. And it's also about consulting where required. So consult with the business, ask them questions, don't presume that you know everything, because that feedback can be critical at times. From a change management point of view, as I mentioned before, it's about making the business aware of the changes that are coming prior to the go live date. Majority of people don't like change, so there's no point in flicking a switch one day and not telling the business that it's coming, because all you're going to do then is have a disgruntled workforce, and that's not what you want when you're trying to implement a new system. Seek feedback from the business, so make them part of the process, and that will assist with the change management. And you may need to, in our situation, it was changing our approach for different parts of the business. So if you're in an environment where one part does something slightly different, see how you can incorporate that into the process rather than necessarily an outright no. Because I say, once again, it helps keep people on the journey. From an integration point of view, highly recommend it. To have one source of truth just makes things so much easier. We know that if there is an issue, it's in our payroll system, so we know where to go to fix it. But if you are going down the journey of a payroll integration, make sure your data is 100% clean, because you tend to be working on a tight time frame to roll out the onboarding side of things and the offer, and if you don't have your payroll system right, you're trying to chase your tail. And you potentially don't have oodles of resources just sitting there waiting. I know we didn't.
From that perspective, I see that because you did offer an onboarding first, you've actually now got that clean database in your payroll system, so it's making performance and succession and the rest of those automation processes be a lot smoother, because you know that single source of truth.
Definitely, and look, we've had consistency throughout all the different modules that we've implemented. We've had Rainer, who has worked with us on all of them from a page up side of things. So he's been aware of what this module was going to be and how things might play out with different areas. So having that continuity has definitely helped. And look, the other thing I would say is test. We are talking about people's pays, and that's the last thing that you want to stuff up, especially when any new starters, their information is going straight into our payroll system. So there's no longer somebody sitting there data entering somebody's tax file number, etc. So you want that sort of thing to work seamlessly. And even if it means you need to do some parallel things just to check, it's worth doing. From a stakeholder management point of view, make sure you have the right people involved from the start, and ensure that people have kept space available in their diaries to, if more time is needed after your planned go live date, that they're there. So we had people ready and waiting, that when we did go live, payroll people were sitting there who could assist if we needed to tinker with things on that date. We also had people from Page Up there as well. So to have those people available rather than just, I guess, letting you fly, and to get business buy-in, that's the other thing, that the more you can get that, the easier it is to implement. And look, from a training point of view, as I mentioned before, use different means for training, whether it be online, face-to-face, depending upon what works in your organisation, and make sure that you've got training materials available for those people who start post your implementation, because you need to be able to cater for them as well. And you need to be aware too that some people may not interact with this system for 6 months, 12 months. Yeah. So it was great that you showed them on day one when we rolled out the system, but you need to have an understanding that you are going to constantly get questions about how to use the system or where can I find information, even though you may have trained them. So it's having that level of understanding as well.
Fantastic. So be ready for it.
Yep.
Fantastic. Look, we're starting to get very, very low on time now, because we did make that promise at the beginning of today that we try to keep today to about the 50-55 minute mark, so we're coming up on that. But there are a couple of questions that, and there's a plethora of questions left over here. So sorry guys, we're not going to be able to get to them all, but we will answer a couple of them for you. So Michaela, are you okay to answer something around, so how mature are your HR processes in each of those 6 silos that you had at the beginning there?
Look, this varies. Some of the systems have been around, so our recruitment system being PageUp is probably the oldest, and that's probably been around for close to 10 years. Whereas we've got things like our remuneration system, we've probably only been using that for about 2 years.
Right.
So wasn't significantly old in comparison to that. Our performance and succession, that's probably been around for maybe 7, probably not dissimilar with learning. So as I say, the age of them and the maturity would vary. Look, you could also look at that from a maturity point of view, in the sense that one of those systems we built from the ground up, so it was as mature as we kept it, versus our recruitment system, which was constantly being updated. So different journeys each of those were going on. And look, how did it influence our decision to decide PageUp was our ideal solution? It was really about, our journey started around onboarding. And it was when we looked at onboarding and what some of the other organisations out there had from an onboarding point of view, we knew that we wanted something that provided an onboarding portal so that our applicants and our new employees could access the system beforehand. We knew we wanted something which would interact with our managers and the employee, so it sort of puts the manager in a position where they need to take ownership of the process, because you can remind the new employee of things that the manager should be doing or have they discussed. And so we looked at that and went, what's out there that's going to suit our workforce that will cater for a mobility solution? And that's how our journey started. So it was only once we started looking, once again, we could build something ourselves, but we were going to eventually head to that same point where the system was only going to be as good as the money we constantly invested in it to keep it up to date. And
then you're also reliable for that yourself.
Correct.
So your time to be able to do that. Yep.
Yep, and the resources which, you know, IT's got enough projects that they're working on than to build something like that for us. And then on top of that, looking at the other solutions that were out there, it was only once we looked at PageUp and went, our performance module, we probably need to spend a bit of money into that to get it to where we want from a mobility point of view. What happens if we looked at PageUp's performance module?
Right.
And so it was sort of we'll look at performance. Okay, well, while we're here, I wonder what their remuneration looks like. So it was, I guess, we didn't start out this process for a suite which solved all our problems. We'd even looked at, could you build an interface that sat on top and we could keep all of those systems as silos. But that in itself would have been a big beast to have undertaken. As I say, we thought the PageUp solution ticked our boxes.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that. And look, we are now very much at time, so apologies again to the number of people that have sent through questions. We will work with Michaela to get answers for you to those questions over the next couple of days and get those answers out to you via your contact here at PageUp. Greatly thank you, Michaela, to you for your time today, your honesty and your sharing of information. I'm sure that the participants online are very, very grateful that there's somebody else who's going through the same or has been open to sharing your story so that they may be able to learn from that, and especially your tips and such as well. So yeah, thank you very much. Have a good rest of the day, Michaela.
No problem at all. Thanks, Penny.
Bye, everybody.